Well, the All Blacks said before the game against Italy here in Lyon that they needed to make a statement, and 96-17 would suggest they did. Is that the way you saw it, Jeff?
Absolutely. Going into the game, there's no doubt they were looking to build on the week they had in Bordeaux. They said they were preparing well, but there was an edge to their performance. And every World Cup, when they get put under pressure, there's one performance they can usually fall back on, and they've done that in the past. And the good thing for the All Blacks is now I think they've got another game. They can get themselves sort of back on an even keel, understand that that was the one they needed to do, that was the performance they needed to get themselves into the quarterfinal. But Mills, ultimately, some guys put their hand up, but to me it's the returning players. The fact that all of a sudden Geordie Barrett, Shannon Frizzell, to me were the big two that made a real difference in the squad.
Yeah, I suppose there would have been a few anxious Kiwis, you know, in anticipation for this game, because you just didn't quite know whether the All Blacks could possibly step up to the level that, you know, the South Africa, the Irish game. I loved it because you're right. The returning players, 9 changes from the last game from 14 odd days ago. So 2 completely different teams, and they've come out and really made a statement regardless of the score. If you strip everything back, their performance was clinical. There was a patch in there when they gave away penalties, and I think that'll be the big focus. They obviously, when they play bigger teams, they will make you pay. And Italy didn't really get much reward from that. But in saying that, really impressed, and there'll be a bit more spring in their step this morning, I'd say, Nisbo. The bodies and those bruises won't feel as sore. But definitely, it was a very, very good performance from this All Black side.
I suppose the big question is, were the All Blacks really good or were the Italians really bad?
Well, we took the game away from them very, very quickly, and when you do that against a side like Italy, who would have been banking on the fact of keeping it close, and a lot of the games they have won, big test matches they've won in recent history, they've been right there. They've scrapped away, and then they've won late in games. The moment the All Blacks got out to 20-point lead, you got the sense the game was over. Yeah. But that was the All Blacks' responsibility going into the game, was to take it away from them. The big question I have now is, though, I'm not sure there's too much time for anyone else to play their way into the 23 or 24. There's obviously Ethan de Groot's the question mark about when he comes back. Tamaiti Williams made a real statement. What it did indicate is we have got a little bit of depth in some positions, but we did see what happened when Shannon Frizzell was replaced. It was Scott Barrett who went to blindside flanker, so they've got some options there now. Plenty of experience. The other one, clearly, is the open side flanker position. Sam Cane got 25 minutes of work in this test match. He'll need to get some work if he wants to start in the game against Ireland next week against Uruguay. And Dalton Papali'i probably had his best test in an All Black jersey for a while, Mills, in terms of, you know what, I'm an option, I'm a genuine option here. Are you prepared to start me in the big games?
Yeah, and also at the back, Beauden Barrett's played, every single game, and so do they tweak there, give him possibly a week off or come off the bench? They've got some options, and what we're clearly seeing is, the fitness levels of the All Blacks. Regardless of whether you've had a week off or 2, they've come and they're at another level. So, the other sides will be looking at it, and the thing is, are they prepared to play that high tempo game that the All Blacks are producing? When you look at it, the likes of the Irish, they're probably the ones that could go to that level. The Welsh. Are South Africa looking at it now, and they looking forward and saying, well, how do you frustrate the All Blacks? And, from the outside looking in, the only way you sort of frustrate them at the moment is to play that slow tempo game. Kick to the corners, force them to make mistakes, penalties, and force them out of that high tempo game. Because last night was very clear that if the All Blacks get their way and play the high tempo, fast game, no team, I think, would be able to stick with them, and you've got to prepare to sort of take that risk against the All Blacks.
That's a World Rugby now, though, isn't it? It's on World Rugby to say, you talk about tempo. No sitting down, no just taking a rest because you're tired. I mean, you watch the All Blacks, they had a real purpose about the way they went about their business. The fact that every time they scored points, they were back at halfway, resetting, getting ready for the next play at high tempo, even to the point where when the All Blacks were kicking for a touch off a penalty, the hooker was almost front running it from the side, and he was already ready to go the moment the ball goes into touch. So I think there's some little things that they've got an intent about the way they want to play the game. They'd like to see the game played that way, not just for them, but I think for the fans, for the people watching, Nisbo.
Yep, for sure. And one thing we did talk about in the build-up to this game was impact off the bench. We didn't perhaps get it against the French in Paris, but boy, did we get some impact yesterday.
And when you got experience with some youthful exuberance, and that's what you get with a Tamaiti Williams' first game in a Rugby World Cup, but then you had Sam Cane, you had Dane Coles and Sam Whitelock. No other team in the World Cup is going to have that type of experience coming off the bench. But then you talk about, and I've got to say, Damien McKenzie made his statement, right, in terms of the fact you've got to put me there, you've got to keep me there, and I've got to be an option, because he changed the way the All Blacks play when he came on.
Oh, he certainly did, and I think that's where they've sort of got things, right. They've given them an opportunity. Cam Roygaard came on, an instant impact once again. Damien McKenzie and the injection sort of he brings, and so that's now going to be the key for the All Blacks and everyone else, is when it gets to that slow game. How can they adapt it to obviously bring guys off the bench, or how do they get that tempo back? Because we've seen the French did that to them, the South Africans have done it to them. The key now is whether any other team are prepared to sort of that play that high tempo game and force the All Blacks into mistakes.
Well, that's the big question, boys. Finally, is that performance from the All Blacks likely now to make teams like Ireland, the Springboks, France feeling a bit nervous?
Well, I wouldn't say nervous, but it's a reminder. It's a reminder, if you allow the All Blacks to play, and with the talent they do have, and particularly around the back line, they're settled. I think the other countries are now well and truly aware of what the All Blacks have at their disposal, and how are you going to counter that. And I ultimately think if you're South Africa and you're Ireland, you've got some other challenges in front of you you've got to take care of first. They've got to take care of Scotland, Ireland. South Africa have got a massive challenge in front of them, and likelihood in France. So I think there's a lot still to play out.
Oh, this is huge, isn't it? I mean, clearly under the radar, the All Blacks, those losses against the French and also the Springboks. But how wonderful is this Rugby World Cup? You now got the All Blacks back in the frame. Yeah. We're happy. I suppose all the Kiwis are happy now that we know we've got a team that can play that sort of style of rugby. And when you look at the other side, man, I can't wait to get the quarterfinals, because there are some quality teams. And as we said right from the get-go, any team can win this competition. But there's certainly some top rugby being played at the moment, lads.
So there we are, great performance by the All Blacks, big win over the Italians, and now we stand by for the match on Thursday here in Lyon against Uruguay.